Viridian, the Green Guide. By Clouds. My head in the clouds not coming down. Read by Oak Shadow 5. Chapter 35. Relapse. Summary. Izuku has a bad day. The distraction from Izuku's fight last night was obvious as he walked to the park to meet Kaminari. Various damaged buildings were blocked off with caution tape, and orange cones surrounded the various holes that the villain had torn into the ground during his rampage. Even after almost an entire day, anyone could have tracked the path Izuku led the villain just by looking around. It was terrible. Why hadn't he done something more? There had to have been some way to stop the villain, or at least localize the destruction. Izuku had been so busy running for his life that he didn't even think about property damage. It was a good thing that he'd never be a real hero, because a real hero would have been strong enough to prevent this. It took him longer than it normally would to reach the park, partly because he was rubbernecking at the destruction, and partly because he was still sore from basically jumping off a roof to save those girls. He hadn't even been able to prevent them from being injured. Why did the heroes even put up with him? It seemed like their lives would be a lot easier if he'd never become a vigilante to begin with. Maybe he'd just get it over with and... Izuku shook his head in an attempt to knock himself out of a spiral. He couldn't kill himself just yet. He would at least have to say goodbye to Eraser, since he knew he was suicidal and at least pretended that he cared. Maybe he could have Eraser talk to Mom once he was gone. Having a hero come to comfort her would probably soften the blow. He would be able to explain better than Izuku could that it wasn't her fault, and that he never wanted to hurt her. He could help her grieve. Was that asking too much? Hey, dude! Kaminari waved his hand in front of Izuku's face, making him flinch and knocking him from his thoughts. He hadn't even realized he'd already arrived at the park. You okay? You were kinda spaced out there. Izuku felt like he'd eaten a rock. He'd managed to make a friend, only to make them worry about him almost immediately. Kaminari would probably be better off if they'd never met in the first place. He forced a bright smile onto his face and laughed. Yeah, sorry. I guess I just didn't sleep well last night. Mood, Kaminari said with mock seriousness. So, are you still good to train today, or do you want to take a break? No, I'm good. No matter how awful Izuku felt, he'd promised to teach Kaminari how to fight, and he couldn't let him down. Which meant that he couldn't die yet. He could probably ask Eraserhead to either teach Kaminari or explain things to his mother, but not both. That would be leaving him with a bigger burden than Izuku already was alive, which was the absolute last thing he wanted to do. Alright, so last time we focused on hitting, right? Yep. Kaminari's face lit up with excitement. I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of it. I've been practicing some of the moves on my own too. Perfect. Izuku thought for a moment about what they could work on that wouldn't be too physical. He'd already made Kaminari worry by spacing out, so it would be really bad if they were practicing throws or something, and Izuku failed to hit the bruised grips he'd gotten last night. Well, I guess the opposite of hitting is dodging, so we can work on that. Only if you want to, that is. If you want to work on something else, that's totally okay too. It's just that dodging's important in a fight, and it might be useful if you want to learn, not that you have to. Alright. Kaminari cut off his ramblings with a cheer. Let's learn to dodge. Izuku smiled despite himself, Kaminari's enthusiasm gradually infecting him and chipping away at his depression as they walked through some of the ways that Izuku had learned to avoid attacks as Viridian. So, if the villain's taller than you, then you're going to want to bend down low. The tallest people I've fought tend to underestimate how low they really need to aim to hit me, so, you can use that to your advantage. Oh, and there's going to be a second or two after they miss you where they need to recover, but you shouldn't let them. You'll already be down low from dodging their attack, so you should go for their knees if you can to throw them off balance. The knees? Kaminari's eyes were wide and he let out a shocked laugh. Whoa, Midoriya, you felt dirty. Do I? Izuku hadn't really considered that. He didn't really think of his style as fighting dirty. Not that he really had a style to begin with, but if he did, he'd mostly think of it as, well, as staying alive. The heroes he fought with hadn't said anything about it, but maybe it was a bad thing? But then again, it was a big deal since he wasn't a hero. but Kaminari was going to be. Maybe he should ask Eraser about it and make sure it was okay? Honestly, he would probably say that anything that kept him alive was a good decision, since, logically, a hero needed to be alive to save people. Come to think of it, a lot of his moves were based off Eraserhead and the other heroes he'd observed during his vigilante hours, so teaching Kaminari to fight dirty probably wasn't the end of the world. They could always get him out of the habit once he got to UA. Izuku realized he'd spaced out again and shrugged. I guess I kinda do. Sorry about that. Nah, it's fine, Kaminari grinned. You've got this cool kind of Street Fighter vibe to you, dude. I guess that makes sense, Izuku muttered. What did you say? Kaminari leaned in. I didn't quite catch that. Izuku really meant that it made sense that he fought like a street fighter, considering that he'd learned to fight on the streets, but he couldn't just tell Kaminari that. Well, you have to use whatever you can to win. Yeah, big moves might be flashy and good for the press, but at the end of the day, you're fighting to keep yourself and others alive and safe, so you can't hold yourself back. Plus ultra, Kaminari cheered. Yeah, Izuku chuckled hesitantly. Go beyond, right? Do you want to practice? Kaminari nodded and got into a sloppy fighting stance, though it was marginally better than it had been the first training session. So, are you just gonna attack me, or... Instead of answering, Izuku punched him. Kaminari's eyes widened and he stumbled backward, but wasn't able to scramble away fast enough to avoid a hit, and ended up on his butt. Ow. Sorry. Izuku reached down to help him up. I, maybe should have slowed down? Nope. Kaminari grimaced and rubbed the place Izuku had hit. I'm good, but, maybe tell me what I did wrong? Oh, right, Izuku nodded frantically. Well, for a hit like that, you're going to have more luck dodging to the side rather than going straight backward. Let's try it again, but this time, when you see the attack coming, roll to the side like this. Izuku demonstrated a roll that he'd picked up from Eraserhead's parkour lessons and adapted to be more useful for combat, only remembering he was still injured when he hit the ground. He grimaced, but pushed through the pain, and it was less than a second before he was back on his feet with a smile on his face. There wasn't any reason to worry Kaminari when it was Izuku's own fault that he was injured. Just like that, okay? Izuku said cheerfully. Ready? Kaminari nodded. Let's go! Izuku waited a long moment before he attacked again, this time making sure he telegraphed his movements enough that Kaminari knew what he was about to do. There was still a moment of hesitation where he panicked, but he managed to roll just in time that Izuku's punch only grazed his shoulder. He didn't put in quite enough momentum to get right back to his feet like Izuku had, but it was a start. I did it! Kaminari sprawled on his back and flayed his legs. I actually did it, Midoriya! I dodged! You did? Izuku said proudly. Now, let's do it again. You'll get better at it every time. They kept sparring until they were both sweaty and tired, then they kept going. As Kaminari got better at dodging, Izuku started to mix up his attacks. Sometimes he hit high, sometimes low. He even threw in a few kicks. Each time, Kaminari struggled with a new attack, but after a few hits, he would get the hang of it. Izuku had managed to mostly push away his funk from earlier, and everything was going really well. That was, until Kaminari decided to counterattack. Izuku really should have seen it coming. It was a sloppy attack, and if he hadn't been tired from sparring and distracted by his own thoughts, he wouldn't even have had to think about dodging it. As it was, however, he was just concentrating on acting natural despite the soreness in his ribs that was getting worse every time he moved. So when Kaminari ducked one of his punches and dove for him, he didn't have enough time to move out of the way. He tackled Izuku around the waist, and they both went tumbling to the hard ground. Between the force of Kaminari's tackle and the force of hitting the ground, Izuku blacked out. Dude! Kaminari's voice sounded distant, and Izuku struggled to drag himself back into awareness. Are you okay? Did I hurt you? Do I need to take you to the hospital? No, Izuku forced out a chuckle, but winced when it hurt his ribs. It was just a really good tackle. The spottiness in his vision finally cleared, and Izuku was vaguely aware of Kaminari hovering over him. Seriously, dude, are you okay? Because you don't look okay. I'm fine. Izuku tried to force his brain to work well enough to come up with some kind of excuse, but was coming up blank. Before he could get his brain to cooperate, Kaminari was reaching for him and pulling at a shirt that had apparently ridden up sometime during their spar. They both reflexively hissed, Izuku out of pain and Kaminari out of shock at the mottled mix of purple and green that was currently his torso. So much for not worrying him. Dude. Kaminari stared at him with wide eyes. What happened? Did I do that to you? Why didn't you stop me? The fear of Kaminari blaming himself for Izuku's stupidity was what finally kicked his brain into gear. No, it wasn't anything you did. I was already like this. What did you do to get that? Kaminari yelped. Izuku scrambled for any kind of excuse. I fell. Kaminari looked at him in disbelief. Off a roof? Because you don't get bruises like that from just tripping on the sidewalk? Well, it was technically true, but he couldn't just say that. Apparently he took too long to respond, because Kaminari's eyes widened. Wait, I was just saying that as a joke, but you actually fell off a roof, didn't you? Wait, how do you fall off a roof? You didn't jump, did you? Abort mission! Izuku was in a blind panic. He couldn't burden Kaminari with the whole wanting to kill himself thing. They were just barely friends and he was so cheerful. Izuku couldn't drag him down like that. His mind raced as he tried to come up with a plausible explanation, and he laughed in relief when he remembered Ereza had teaching him to climb roof in the first place. Don't worry, Kaminari. Izuku smiled brightly. I was just doing some parkour last night and took a jump. I guess I wasn't quite ready for it and fell right into a dumpster. So I guess I did kinda jump, but definitely not in the way you're thinking. I know parkour is kind of a risky sport. Not nearly as risky as vigilantism. So injuries are expected sometimes, you know. I just didn't want you to worry, so I didn't say anything. Dude, worrying about each other is what friends do, Kaminari scolded. I could have learned dodging another day. Wait, you taught me dodging so there wouldn't be physical contact. Oh, I'm such an idiot. I'm so sorry. No, it's not your fault. Izuku waved his arms frantically. I didn't want you to know. Kaminari sighed. I get that. Believe me, I do. Why do you think I'm still frying my brain every time you use my quirk? But we're friends, Midoriya. We can trust each other with things like this, okay? Izuku hesitated. He'd never told anyone about his injuries before. Not the ones from Kachan, not the ones from vigilantism. He didn't even think he knew how to be upfront about things like this. Kaminari leaned forward, not satisfied with the silence. Okay, Midoriya? It hadn't been the end of the world when Mom found out about the bullying, had it? Yeah, it'd been stressful, but if she'd never found out, Izuku would have never transferred to online school and probably would never have learned to hack. Maybe having someone to turn to for his parkour injuries wouldn't be so bad either. Okay. Izuku felt the tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. That's what friends do, right? Yeah. Kaminari's face split into a sly grin. So you really fell into a dumpster, huh? Kaminari laughed as Izuku hit him on the chest, a small, genuine smile on his own face. Shut up, Kaminari. That's what friends are for. That was chapter 35 of Viridian the Green Guide. It's the 4-month anniversary of this podfic. Thank you all for staying here, or even for getting here and listening to this. I know there was a pause, like last week, but that was because I was ill, as said in 2 community posts. My voice is still a bit rough, but I'm good to go again, as you can hear. It could be that my voice is still a bit off in this recording, but now you know why. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all in 2 days on Wednesday. Bye! Hey, outtakes. Izuku waited a long moment before he attacked again, this time making sure he telegraphed his movements enough that Kaminari knew what he was about to do. Sorry. It's just funny to think about. He has to telegraph his moves so much, because Kaminari is really bad at quackless fighting, at hand-to-hand. Okay, I'm good to go again. Dude! I can do this.